And I think what you'll find is that after about 24 hours, you start to feel very differently. Like there's a layer of tension on your face, your shoulders, maybe your chest, other parts of your body, that just isn't there after one day. And then after 2 days, 3 days, you start to have a different relationship with yourself. You can feel your own feelings and hear your own voice more clearly. It is not something that's easy to experience in everyday society. Hi, how are you? There was a time in my life when I was very isolated, when I was really alone, and I learned everything that I needed to know about myself in that period. I know that sounds like an impossible statement, but when you spend time with yourself alone, whether it's by choice or not, you really figure out who you are. There's a few quotes, a few sayings that I'm really fond of. You know, I spent a lot of time researching being alone and loneliness and separating those two out and figuring out the benefits of how I was living. First of all, I want to say that the reason that I'm making this video is because I was alone as a result of an addiction to alcohol. And when you're in that situation, there are a lot of things, primarily a dysfunctional body and tremendous shame that separate you from the community or the people that you need. And if you're going through that, I strongly encourage you to attend some of the groups that helped me. You don't have to participate. I didn't participate. I just went to the groups and just sat and listened. The ones that I found most helpful were Recovery Dharma, sometimes called Refuge Recovery, and also Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll put a couple links in the show notes for those. So if you feel like you are ready for some help, please seek out those groups. Go get the help you need. So being alone, there's a saying I love, which is, when you find yourself alone, the person you need to find is yourself. Man, I was in so much pain. I was suffering so much from being alone, from feeling lonely. Now, those are two different experiences, but I'll get to that in a minute. But when I was alone, I was suffering so much. Ironically, there was no way that I could not have grown through that. It's through our hardest times, our storms, when we're forced to take the hardest looks at ourselves, and when we, as a result, learn the most, and when we grow. And, you know, things tend to go like that in life. And I guess, even though I'd rather not go through a storm, I have to admit I'm grateful for them. So one of the first things that I found was that there are people who actually choose to live alone. And at the time, this blew my friggin' mind. I was like, why would anyone choose to be without friends, without family, without the voices of other people? And as I started YouTubing and reading more about these individuals and their choices, the way that they live really started resonating with me. And I started to see that I actually was being forced to live that way. For example, I am a person who gets overstimulated pretty easily. I don't like being in crowds. I don't like being in front of an audience. I do it pretty skillfully when I have to, but I have a limit. I can be in a crowd of people or a party or in front of an audience for, I don't know, an hour, but then I am completely spent. I have to go to my hotel room or home or wherever, and I have to be alone. Even with my own family at home, sometimes I have to retreat to the sanctuary of my bedroom or go outside and be alone by myself for a while, just to let my nervous system regulate. And people who tend to lead a solitary life, they also are highly sensitive people. They are people who get overstimulated very easily, and some of them really don't want to be around the noises of subways, the buzzing of whatever the hell kinds of lights these are that we use these days. They used to be fluorescent. I think now they're some kind of laser. Is that rat? And they also, in general, don't like the constructs of society, which brings me to my next quote, which is by Alan Watts. He says, in order to find out who you are, in order to find out who you really are, you have to go out into the wilderness and be alone. Because when you're around, when you're in society, you're constantly being told who you are by everything, by the roles that society places on you, by the obligations, financial and otherwise, that society has constructed for you, the boundaries within which you have to operate, even the name that you're given, the gender identity that you're given, etc. All of those things define you. You're given your identity by society in many ways. And yeah, you could say, oh, no, nobody gives me my identity. I am who I am. But think about the things that you insist on being under the threat of being, weak or not good enough if you weren't those things. Like, you insist perhaps on being smart or being successful or financially stable or a real man or an independent, strong woman or a real woman, right? A lot of those things, or not old or young or whatever, right? A lot of those things we have to work so hard to maintain. It drains our energy, even if it's just a little bit, a constant, slow leak of energy over a long period of time, over our whole life, is exhausting. That's both confining and, like I said, draining. So I love that quote by Alan Watts, and it really illustrates an experience that I had very clearly. I think it was the first time that I decided to take a week off from everything and stay at home and meditate and journal and just rest. No social media, no news, no radio, no YouTube, no input, no voices of others. And now that's my favorite way to take a break. You might try this, staycation or stimulation break or whatever you want to call it. Some people call it a social media fast or a device fast. And basically you just turn everything off, you drop out of contact. Yeah, you leave your phone on and tell your loved ones, please don't call me unless there's some kind of emergency. But other than that, I will be unreachable. I want to be unreachable. And you just sit at home with, just the sunlight coming through the window, no overhead lights to reduce the buzzing and the stimulation of sound, the buzzing coming from lights and refrigerators and air conditioners and heaters and stuff. We don't realize how much of that stuff we're actually taking in regularly. And I think what you'll find is that after about 24 hours, you start to feel very differently. Like there's a layer of tension on if you're like me, on your face, your shoulders, maybe your chest, other parts of your body, that just isn't there after one day. And then after 2 days, 3 days, you start to have a different relationship with yourself. You can feel your own feelings and hear your own voice more clearly. It is not something that's easy to experience in everyday society. It is something that I strongly encourage you to practice every day, with the additional self-awareness and self-healing vitamin supplement boost of 2 or 3 days on a digital electronics fast staycation thing. Yeah. You know, I was alone for a long time. I was single for a long time, is what I mean. And when I was single, I wasn't always alone, but I didn't have a significant relationship. I had my kids half the week, and so at least half the week, and sometimes during vacations, the full week or more, I would be completely alone. And in that time, I learned what is really important to me. Yeah, some things had to come through. Now, some things had to come through self-reflection and hard work. Well, self-reflection is hard work, is what I mean. I mean, what's fucking harder than having to face yourself and be honest with yourself about yourself? I don't like that part of myself so much, so now I have to look at it. Okay, here we go. But when you do that on a regular basis, you really figure out what's important to you. Just the basics of what it is that you like and you don't like. I like being this way towards other people. I really don't like the fact that I said that to myself. I feel not good. Let's see, what do I feel? Ooh, there's like some sadness in there that I feel. I also feel some shame, and I feel humiliated that I was talked to that way, and embarrassed that I spoke back to somebody as I did. That's just one example, but the experiences that we have in life are myriad. And through spending short periods of time, 2-3 days, alone, almost in silence, reflecting and resting, you start to become the person who you really are. You start to restore the person who you really are. Another quote that I like, I can't remember, is Carl Jung, or I think it was someone around that time anyway, is when you find yourself angry, when you find yourself alone and angry or sad, or you're sad and angry because you're alone, you're in really bad company. So, we all contain multitudes. We all contain like a dozen personalities, a dozen different ways of reacting. And sometimes for many of us, the way that we react is unintentional, unpredicted, because it's unconscious. When you find yourself alone and you're like, wow, this is really painful, this is really not fun, I can't stand being alone. A lot of what I experienced, at least, I can't speak for you, but a lot of what I experienced was the surfacing of feelings that had always been there, but that were starting to come out because suddenly I was so quiet. You probably have this experience when you go to sleep at night. That's the moment when you get quiet and you stop focusing on work. That's the moment you find you cannot stop thinking about some things, often work, thoughts keeping you awake. It's when we become quiet that the less conscious or the unconscious things start to come into our awareness, because there's nothing distracting us. There's no lights and social media and work and family and training and working out. There's nothing distracting us. So when you are alone and you start to feel some things that are not so good, I believe those feelings have been with you the whole time. Probably your whole recent existence. And part of our work, and a very noble work it is to examine those feelings, to accept them. Hell, you're already aware of them. Your next step might as well be accepting them. And then being curious about them. What's underneath those feelings? What other feelings are there within me? And then nurturing those feelings. It's really all right that I feel this way. I feel all these terrible things, but I ate today, I have my rent paid, or X amount of my rent saved so I can pay it. I have clothing. I have a place to stay tonight. I hope for each of you watching that you do have food today and a place to stay, and that you have your rent paid or money saved to pay rent. at least partially. And those moments, I hope that they serve for you as a bell, a reminder, a flag. Hey, pay attention, there's something really bothering you. There's something on your mind all the time. Now's a chance for you to deal with it. It's an opportunity for you to look more closely at it, for you to experience the feeling more fully, to let it come out so you can be aware of it and work with it. There's a great system by Tara Brach. It's called RAIN. Recognize, accept, investigate, and nurture. And I use that as my general framework. It seems to be like almost the intuitive order in which we go through things when we have a difficult feeling, from the becoming aware of the feeling or the feeling bothering us or coming out, all the way through to accepting the feeling, understanding where it comes from, allowing ourselves to have the feeling, and reminding ourselves, creating a sense of security within ourselves by reminding ourselves that it's normal, normalizing, that we feel the way that we do, understandable that we feel this. Of course we're experiencing this because of our history of what we have been through. And we need to give ourselves patience and honor those feelings and allow them to run their course. RAIN, R-A-I-N, Tara Brach. I'll put a link in the description or whatever. All right, so, and the last thing that I want to add is that I now love being alone. I have been in a beautiful, incredible, nurturing relationship for several years now. And I still need alone time. I still need to be alone. Hell, I'm alone right now. I'm loving being alone. Every minute I get, every chance I get to be alone, I love to just go and be alone. And every quarter I take about 3 days, 2-3 days, and I go away and I'm just alone. Or if my partner is going to go on a trip without me, I take that opportunity to clear my calendar and spend a week or more completely alone. Sometimes I do, silent meditation retreat. Although that experience is really great, it's still I'm around other people, so the stimulation of, being around other people, eating, moving through the hallways, going in and out of meditation halls, it's still quite a lot of stimulation for me, and the feeling is really different when there's no voice in your ears anymore. The only voice in your head is yours. The experience is much more revealing, much more nurturing. Being alone is really beautiful. I'm grateful for every chance that I have to be alone. If you're lonely, that is another issue. Loneliness is not the same as being alone. Loneliness is very, very difficult to deal with. It makes us sick. It shortens our lifespan. I don't feel ready to talk about loneliness in this video. I know if you're lonely, you're suffering. So I'm going to do some research and think for a while about some things that I might be able to offer you if you are experiencing loneliness. Loneliness comes from many sources, many reasons why we find ourselves alone and lonely. But for now, I can tell you that if you use some of the guidance, some of the recommendations or the sayings in this video, that will start you on a journey of doing your self-work, your self-healing, so that being alone can actually be a beautiful experience, a nurturing experience. So you'll be hearing from me about loneliness soon, and until then, I hope you're all well, and I hope you take care of yourselves and one another.